Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 857. 857 Sunday. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, and don't forget today, Dumbass of the Week. Get your votes in on this video in the comments section of this video for Dumbass of the Week. Should be some pretty good competition this week. We've had quite a few of the usual suspects make some good contributions. I don't think there's any clear de facto winner this week, unless I missed something. So it should be a pretty even competition this week, and we'll see who comes out on top. Now, going to get to a few things today that I'm going to talk about some new Strzok and Page text, which again just provide further evidence that the entire Mueller operation, what I believe was the insurance policy, was nothing more than a plot to entrap Trump into violating or obstructing an investigation. It was a trap, and I think we'll see that. More evidence than that. We have, of course, more information for the timeline for how Mueller got appointed and the role that Rodenstein played in that. And some other issues, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the situation for the Democratic Party and the most recent debate, which I haven't had very much time to talk about. So anyway, we'll get to all these things starting right now. So here we go. Well, there have been new Page, well, not so much new, but just in context of the situation, these Strzok Page text. And what this shows us, and what we've known for a long time, what Devin Nunes has most recently been focusing a lot on, is that Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, and the Hillary donor posse knew in the very first month that there was no collusion or conspiracy. In fact, in the first month, Mueller's Hillary donor posse was already working on laying the obstruction trap for Trump. Now, when I first heard Nunes say this about a week ago on Fox, and he used that phrase, lay an obstruction trap, I really like that phrasing. I like the wording, and I like exactly what it says, because it gives you a slightly different viewpoint of it, and I think it really nails it on the head, because that's really what when you look at it now in the rearview mirror, that's exactly what the Mueller investigation was, and essentially it pretty much would define an insurance policy. They realize that they have nothing on Trump in terms of collusion conspiracy. This is very well known, certainly would have been known by just about everybody on the Mueller team at that point, because they were the ones who, before Mueller, were involved in the initial investigation. And so we know from Strzok and Page that they never felt there was any there. We had Comey testifying in Congress saying they hadn't found any evidence of it. So they knew when Mueller came in. So what they were doing, though, was laying a trap, an obstruction trap, to create a false investigation, knowing good and well, going after an innocent man, especially someone like Trump, who will defend himself, that they would be able to find little things and drag the investigation out as long as it took until they finally got enough information, what they believed would be enough to get Trump for obstructing the investigation, forgetting all about why they were having an investigation, because they knew that was total BS. So that was never going to work. And of course, they were able to drag it out for 2 years because they had Rodenstein, who was basically on the team. And so when Barr came in, Barr, of course, put the kibosh on it. And that brought it to a close. But they still had to try to come up with something, and that's how you got that part 2 of the Mueller report, this lame argument that Trump obstructed the investigation, or obstructed justice, I guess you would say. And so now we know that this was all in totally a setup, and the entire thing was about creating an obstruction trap. And here is an email from Peter's been stroking us, or a text from Peter's been stroking us to Lisa Page. This text was June the 7th of 2017. This is literally 3 weeks after Uncle Bob the Executioner has been appointed special counsel. So Strzok sends a text to Page, and he says, we're starting the obstruction team brief, but just come in, sit in on whatever comes next. We're starting the obstruction team brief, but just come in, sit in on whatever comes next. So they're talking about this meeting that he's going to go to. So here's Strzok telling Page that he's going to a meeting where they're going to be starting the obstruction team briefing. So they're going to now lay out the plot for how they're going to entrap Trump in this obstruction case. This is literally 3 weeks after Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, has been appointed. And of course, he probably knows nothing about it, right? So essentially, Mueller's posse, the Hillary donor posse, were counting on Trump to obstruct the investigation, but Trump just didn't take the bait. He didn't take the bait. He never fired Mueller. He never withheld documents. He allowed his lawyer and everyone else in his administration to testify, and he answered their questions, their written questions. The only thing he did not do was do a one-on-one with Andrew Wiseass, which would have been a perjury trap. And his lawyers were smart enough to tell Trump, don't do it, and that was the wise move. Never would you sit down with Weissman, and under any circumstances, knowing how he operates. So this should leave no doubt in anyone's mind what happened here. And I'm sure that Mr. Durham is looking at this very carefully, along with other things that you can see. Again, this is just more supporting evidence. This is not the only piece of evidence. There's a lot of supporting evidence to suggest that there was never any crime. They knew there was never any crime because they knew it was manufactured. And the entire idea was to create this false investigation and then to drag it on as long as they possibly could to constantly antagonize Trump, putting Manafort in solitary confinement, going after his friends, threatening to go after his kids, everything they could to try to provoke Trump into doing something that would force him to fire Uncle Bob. That's what they were trying to do, was to get Trump to fire Uncle Bob. Fortunately, Trump was smart enough to know that, and he antagonized them back to play some defense, but he never crossed the line into anything which could be seriously considered obstruction. So he handled it beautifully. His lawyers did a very good job, I think. There was a few things along the way I didn't agree with, but for the most part, I think they did a pretty good job. And of course now there's no doubt, as we see more and more evidence, and as we have more time to look at everything through the rearview mirror, weigh all the evidence, connect all the dots, there's no doubt in my mind, something I arrived at back, I guess, back in early spring. I just started thinking, we've all been trying to figure out the insurance policy, and I really believe a lot of people think it was the FISA warrant. Well, maybe that was part of it, but really I think that the insurance policy was a special counsel to take Trump out if they were unsuccessful, like Strzok was talking about. Hey, if Trump wins, he's probably going to lose, but if he wins, we better have a plan. We better have an insurance policy, something to take him out after he wins. And what would you need? Well, you would need impeachment, because they knew there was no crime. So how did they get impeachment? Well, they would have to provide what the Congress would need to move forward with impeachment. And the easiest thing to get is obstruction, because obstruction can be anything you want it to be. You can twist and spin. A bunch of lawyers can twist and spin anything into obstruction, and once it gets into the purview of the Congress, then it becomes completely political. It's not even a legal matter at that point. It is totally a political issue. So this entire thing was to create a political opportunity for Democrats to go for impeachment based on obstruction, and in order to supply the evidence that they needed, in order for Mueller's team to supply the evidence that the Democrats in Congress needed, they had to amass enough instances of Trump's frustration that they could put that into some sort of a format that would look like obstruction. That's what the entire Part 2 was about. It was really the last gasp for the insurance policy to bring that into fruition, and of course now we know that has failed, notwithstanding the fact that the Penguin is right now doing everything he can to try to get an impeachment investigation by getting the grand jury materials, which I would say is a 0.0001% chance that he will get that information, but we'll see what happens there. But anyway, there you go. More evidence. more evidence that just 3 weeks after Mueller was appointed, they knew there was no crime. They knew there was no conspiracy. They knew there was no collusion. None of that. That was never an issue from day one. They knew it. The only thing it was ever about was to create a fake obstruction case for the purpose of providing what the Democrats needed to move forward with a political action, that being impeachment, because they knew there was never any crimes. How despicable is that? How despicable is that? These people absolutely, and again, now we're talking about the Mueller team. I mean, you know, this idea that that the investigation just begins with the origins and goes up to when Comey was fired or something. No. It's the exact same people who were part of the original frame-up became part of the impeachment team. It's the same people, all the same people, and they were still continuing. It's just a continuation of the original plot. And this would include Andrew Weisass and these other people that were on the Mueller team. They should absolutely also be under investigation for being part of this thing. And that whole Mueller team, all those lawyers, Jenny Rhee and Weissman and all these other people, they should all be caught up in this as well. And they should also be in front of a grand jury because essentially they were a huge part of the plot to take down the president. Here's an interesting timeline of events that regarding pretty much the topic that we were just talking about, with Mueller being appointed, Comey being fired, and how the obstruction case got started, when it got started, who started it, why they started it. Okay, so here is just a short timeline of events. In addition to what we have just discussed, consider the following dates. So here's the bottom line. Rod Rodenstein contacted Uncle Bob, the executioner Mueller, about the special counsel 14 hours after Comey was fired. 14 hours after Comey was fired. So Comey is fired on May the 9th of 2017. The very next day, Andy McCabe begins a criminal obstruction investigation into Trump for firing Comey. That was May 10th. Then, the next day, May 11th, Andy McCabe testifies to Congress. He's asked if Trump or his administration is in any way blocking or messing with this investigation, which McCabe has just started the day before. And McCabe says, under oath, that there was no effort by the administration to impede the investigation. So right there you have it. McCabe saying no, they're not, Trump's not doing anything to impede the investigation. But despite that, the very same day, the New York Times writes an article, almost certainly leaked by Comey, which they talk about this dinner conversation between Comey and Trump, where Trump is talking about loyalty, which is not a big deal and never should have been a news story. It should have been a confidential conversation between Trump and Comey, but Comey obviously leaked it. It was only two people there, Trump and Comey. So the New York Times certainly didn't get that story from Trump. Now, the very next day, May 12th, Andy McCabe meets with Rodenstein to discuss the obstruction investigation, which McCabe had opened 2 days prior and 1 day after Comey was fired. The very next day, May 13th, another meeting is held between Rodenstein and Mueller, Uncle Bob the executioner, and in this particular meeting, Jeff Sessions is in that meeting. Then 2 days after that, May the 15th, McCabe and Rodenstein talk to discuss a special counsel. Then May the 16th, Rodenstein takes Mueller to the White House for a meeting with Trump, and of course Mike Pence was also at that meeting. That exact same day, the New York Times writes an article based on Comey's leak, where Trump asked Comey to go easy on Michael Flynn. That exact same day, we have Rodenstein's assistant, Tash Gehar. She briefs Strzok, who then texts Lisa Page and tells her what's going on. And of course, in that particular message, Peter's been stroking us, mentions the New York Times article. And he just says, in the text, it just says, New York Times push. P-U-S-H. New York Times push. Then, the same exact day, Rodenstein discusses wearing a wire. And of course, now we know that Rodenstein's assistant, Tash Gehar, was present at that meeting where Rodenstein discussed wearing a wire, and she was taking notes. So, here's all these events, and this is a very small time frame. This is the events that happened from the 9th, when Comey was fired, through the 16th, when Mueller was appointed. 7 days. All these things took place in a 7-day period. And as we can see, McCabe went for the special counsel the day after Comey was fired. Then the day after that, he goes to Congress and says that there was no attempt to obstruct the investigation. Yet he has just opened an obstruction case. Then he brings in Rodenstein. We know from previous emails that Rodenstein had asked McCabe to contact Comey. And Comey's like, I'm not calling Comey. He just got fired yesterday. I'm not going to call him. I'm the boss now. Why do I want to call Comey? I'm the boss now. And Rodenstein's like, okay, I guess, And McCabe's like, if you want to talk to Comey, you call him. And Rodenstein literally called Comey to get his opinion. And what did that conversation yield? It yielded Mueller. Every one of these characters needs to be strung up. For those of you who still think Rodenstein's a white hat, man, oh man, I don't know what you're smoking. Okay, so let's get on to some other news here real quick. Let's see. Well, we have Ocasio-Cortez. We're finding out that her chief of staff, Chakrabarty, has been canned, I guess you'd say, fired. So what happens? Well, Pelosi and AOC had this meeting about a week ago. I'm pretty sure I know how that meeting went. I'm pretty sure Pelosi probably said, look, I'm tired of screwing with you. I'm tired of it. You got your chief of staff out there attacking Democrats. You are both working with a group of people trying to unseat seasoned veteran Democrats. It's not going to happen. This is not how things work here. I run the show. I'm the boss. You're a freshman. And let me tell you what. I'm willing to cut a deal with you, and I'm sure there was some offer made to Ocasio-Cortez, but obviously one of the things that she had to do was get rid of Chakrabarty. She probably has to disassociate herself from this group that's trying to unseat veteran Democrats, and she's probably being told to back down. Otherwise, Pelosi probably told her, look, we can bankroll the hell out of a corporate candidate. You're sitting at about 22% approval rating in your district. We'll blow you out, and you'll be a one-term congressman here and gone. You'll be back to tending bar. And of course, AOC's probably thinking about all that money she's making now. She's in Washington. All she's got to do is stick around. And Pelosi's probably telling her, hey, you just do the right things. You'll be here forever. You'll be here forever, and you'll get fabulously wealthy. You have all the benefits and all the perks of being a swamp rat. But if you continue to screw with us and the Democratic Party, and particularly with me, we're gonna write you. We're gonna get rid of your voting district. We'll just eliminate your voting district, or we'll bankroll somebody against you. You're sitting at 22% in your district. So now it's time to shut up and fire your chief of staff and start towing the line, or else you're done. I think that's pretty much how the law was probably laid down to AOC, because you notice she was a lot more timid this past week. Really didn't go after any Democrats too much, and then of course we see our chief of staff gone today. I think Pelosi probably laid down the law to AOC, and she had some time to think about what life's going to be like going back to the Bronx and tending bar, compared to what the type of future she can have being protected by the party if she starts towing the line. I think she's going to start figuring out. And we'll have to wait and see if she can possibly control herself. I'm not so sure she can. Trump is up 10 points with Hispanics and blacks over his 2016 numbers. He is up more than 10 points with Hispanics, and he's up right about 10 points with blacks from where he was in 2016. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Now, how about a little exercise? A little exercise in something called deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning. Not very difficult, fairly simple concept. Doesn't require too much brain power. Keep it very simple. It's just looking at two or more things, comparing them, and determining what you can draw, what conclusion you can draw from some of these comparisons. So I'm going to keep it really simple, just two items on this first issue, and I just want you, through deductive reasoning, to think about what conclusion you draw from these two facts. Just two simple facts. Just two simple facts, and I would be interested in knowing what your conclusion is that you draw from these two facts. Fact number one. The FBI was paying Christopher Steele in 2016 to dig up dirt on Trump. Steele received 13 payments from the FBI. That's fact number one. FBI was paying Steele during 2016 to dig up dirt on Trump, and they paid him 13 payments. That was the FBI paying Steele to dig up dirt on Trump. That's one fact. Here's another fact. At the exact same time that the FBI was paying Steele to dig up dirt on Trump, the rotten Reverend Clinton, her campaign via her lawyer, Mr. Sussman, was also paying Christopher Steele to dig up dirt on Trump. So, in the summer of 2016 and going into the summer and fall of 2016, both the FBI and the rotten Reverend Clinton were paying Christopher Steele to dig up dirt on Trump. What can you deduce from this? What conclusion can you draw from this? Imagine that you're Mr. Durham, and you're sitting back looking at all the evidence, and in addition to everything else, you see these two facts. Let's see. The FBI was paying Christopher Steele during the spring and fall, summer and fall of 2016 to dig up dirt on Trump, and the rotten Reverend Clinton campaign was paying Christopher Steele to dig up dirt on Donald Trump. Using deductive reasoning, what conclusion might you draw? Or what conclusions might you draw? You might draw several conclusions from this. The first conclusion I would draw from this, just the one that just bounces right at me, right off the top of my head, was, well, there must have been some coordination between the two. They're both paying the same guy to get the same result for the same reason. And they're both deep state. What can you conclude from that? Here's something else. We know that Loretta Lynch was feeding information to the rotten Reverend Clinton via Maria Renteria, one of her high-level campaign aides, during the Clinton email investigation, the investigation into Clinton's private homebrew email server. Loretta Lynch feeding information about the investigation to Hillary's aide, Maria Renteria, about that investigation. Now, is it possible that Loretta Lynch was feeding Renteria information about the Trump-Russia investigation or the coup? Is that possible? She was definitely feeding Maria Renteria information about the Hillary Clinton investigation to her email in her server. So, isn't it reasonable to conclude that very likely that Loretta Lynch didn't just stop there, that she continued feeding information to Renteria, to the rotten Reverend Clinton, but this time about the coup efforts, the Trump-Russia investigation? Why would she stop? Why wouldn't she? Just some things to consider. Well, a little bit more on the debates, and I got to tell you, I mean, I haven't heard a lot of people, I've heard a few people mention it, but I have to think that the number one most important and most devastating thing that I saw in those debates, I'm talking about the very last debate we just watched, it just was actually mind-blowing when I saw it, because I didn't actually watch the whole thing. I watched about 20 minutes of it. I couldn't take it, and I watched highlights. And it was during the time when I was watching a highlight clip that I saw this, and I just about fell out of my chair. Because when I think back to 2016, one of the most devastatingly stupid things that the rotten Reverend Clinton did, and she did a lot of stupid things and said a lot of stupid things. The deplorables comment certainly was damaging. But the single most damaging comment that the rotten Reverend Clinton made in the 2016 campaign, which doomed her in what turned out to be 2 or 3 states that she desperately would have needed to win, was the comment when she said that she was going to put the coal workers out of business, that she was going to put the coal industry out of business, that she was coming after the fossil fuel industry. She basically told hundreds of thousands of people in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Texas, South Dakota. She told hundreds of thousands, if not millions, I don't know how many people work in related industries, that she was going to put their entire industries out of business. And that is why Trump was able to pretty much sweep the Midwest. That has a lot to do with why Hillary lost a lot of those states, why they went from blue to red. It was her comments about eliminating all these jobs in coal and the fossil fuel industries. And you would think that if all the things that the Democrats, if they didn't learn anything from 2016, but one thing, you think the one thing they would have learned was that you better be damn careful about talking about putting the fossil fuel industry out of business, unless you think that you can win a general election without winning any states in the Midwest. You can kiss Oklahoma, any hope of Texas or the Dakotas goodbye, because they're big fracking states. So what does Uncle Joe, crazy Uncle Joe Biden, do in the debates? He literally says that he will end America's use of fossil fuels. He's then challenged on it because he doesn't specifically say in what length of time, and so that other nutcase Castro jumps on his case and says, hey, we don't have that much time. We've got 10 years, at which point Biden has to double down, and he comes back and says that there will be no place for fossil fuels in his administration. There you go. And I can guarantee you that the GOP, the Republican Party, has got that video clip, and it has got 5 stars next to it. And if Biden happened to make it as the Democratic nominee, as soon as the campaign starts, they're going to start running ads in Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, South and North Dakota, Oklahoma, and Texas, with that clip of Biden saying that he will end the use of America's use of fossil fuels and that there will be no place for fossil fuels in his administration. And there you go. Slam dunk. He made the exact same mistake Hillary made. Unbelievable. That's how incompetent, that's how stupid this man is. And I keep saying it and saying it. There's no way, I cannot see how Biden can be the nominee. He has to go 8 more months. He has to go 8 more months just to get to the Democratic convention. Look at this man. Do you watch him? He does not have the mental faculties. He does not have the physical energy to go there. And even if he succeeded to get there, then that's just the beginning of a campaign. Then he would have to do a grueling presidential campaign. I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of energy, especially when you're going up against a guy like Trump who does 3 or 4 rallies a day. That will kill Joe Biden. If Joe Biden tried to do 3 rallies a day, he would literally be hospitalized within a week. He's not physically well enough. You can watch him in these debates. He gets his words jumbled up. He's slurring words. His mind drifts. He can't stay focused on something for very long. He seems flustered at times when trying to explain himself. I mean, he's a train wreck. The only reason that he is not at 1% and is not even dropped out yet is because the rest of the field is so freaking bad. It's only because he was Obama's VP and name recognition and the fact that this field is so bad that he's even considered halfway viable. I cannot see Biden. I cannot see, if Biden becomes a nominee, he is going to be destroyed. And I don't think he'll make it. I don't think he can physically make it. And I think a lot of the Democratic Party knows this. And when you look at the rest of the field, there is no one else. There's 20 of them. You got Biden and 19 other people, and I don't think there's a single one of those people who are electable in a presidential election. I just don't see it. I cannot see a single one of them, and I'm not the only one. There's other people pointing this out, including Democrats. There's not a single one of them, just on issues alone, policies and issues. The other 19 are screwed just because of their issues on immigration, issues on taxes, issues on firearms, issues on this, on taxes, you name it. They're so far to the left that they're not even close to being electable. Trump will win 44, 45 states if he runs against any of those 19 clowns. The only one who's even remotely possible is Biden. But I don't think he has the physical ability, the energy to make it. And I don't think he can continue to withstand the attacks that are coming against him. He's almost defenseless. The best thing that happened to Biden that night was when Tulsi Gabbard went after Kamala Harris. That's the only hope he's got, is if someone else comes in and defend him. Someone obviously put out the word that night to go after Biden. He didn't do a bad job. Harris and Booker were supposed to take him out. They failed because they're so totally incompetent. An average, decent politician who's got a reasonably good grasp on the issues and is somewhere in the moderate range could have destroyed Biden in that debate and sent him packing. But they weren't able to get it done. And like I said, the big losers in that debate were the rotten Reverend Clinton, because she was counting on Biden being taken out. And of course Obama, because in order to attack Biden, you almost by default you have to attack Obama. So now they're going after Obama's record. This hurts the overall party, and it drives the part of the base, the however many percent it is, of people who liked Obama, who are what you would call middle of the road or moderate or whatever Democrats. They're seething. They cannot believe what they're hearing. It's further dividing. They really threw an even deeper wedge into the party. And I'm just telling you, these people, and this is why people say, well, you know, you're talking to people at work, and I'm saying, you know, I think here comes Hillary, man. Hillary's coming. And I've been saying this, as most of you know, since the day after she lost in 2016. And that was even before I saw the Democratic field. But I'm telling you, they're going to get to the point where it's going to become obvious that Biden simply cannot cut it. He's not going to get it done. And once you take Biden out of the mix, there is nobody, man. It's a void. You are looking at total, absolute destruction in the general election against Trump with any of those other 19 clowns. The only option will be to bring in someone who can at least ways put up a fight and at least ways run a close enough election and try to pull the party back to the center. And the only person out there who's in the position right now, prepped and ready to go, is the rotten Reverend Clinton. That's why I say I believe she will jump in this race. But first, Biden has to go. And that's what the rotten Reverend Clinton and her people are working on. But I promise you, at some point, the Reverend will lose her patience. She'll pick up the phone and call Maggie Haberman. I'm sure they've already got their talking points for the attack plan to take him out. At which point, Hillary's going to say, go. Haberman will put out the word, and they will immediately stop dropping everything they got on Biden. He will not be able to withstand the attacks he's taking, and by the end of, say, October, that will be pretty much the end of Biden. And as soon as they start talking Hillary, people will see, oh, we got an alternative to Biden? You mean Hillary's actually a possibility? Can we get her to run? And everybody will shift away from Biden over to Hillary. Boom, his numbers fall. She shoots up. Not that she's going to take a rocket ship, because she's still very unpopular in general, but at least ways they will see some sort of a reasonable alternative to Biden, because he cannot get it done, and there's not a single other Democrat on that stage that's even remotely close to being electable. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good weekend. Thanks. Bye.